The movie begins with a Swedish young man named David, who is about to graduate from college. He plans to live in Stockholm with his girlfriend, Nadia, so he takes the opportunity to propose to her. David goes into the bathroom and calls a radio station. Everyone in the restaurant goes quiet to listen because he is speaking in a very confused and awkward way. Even the radio host gets so annoyed that he hangs up on him before David can finish what he wants to say. However, Nadia understands what he was trying to tell her. When David comes out of the bathroom stall, he finds Nadia waiting for him inside the men's restroom. Despite the extremely awkward way he proposed, she happily accepts. But their love story begins to lose its charm after they move to the capital. The two start arguing constantly, and things become much worse when Nadia discovers that she is pregnant and decides not to tell David. She eventually confides in a kind neighbor named Thomas after he notices that she looks exhausted and isn't feeling well. Nadia feels that she isn't ready to take on the responsibility of becoming a mother, and she is afraid that David will leave the entire burden of the pregnancy on her shoulders. Thomas reassures her, telling her that everything changes when the baby arrives and that having a child is the best thing in the world. His voice begins to tremble as he admits that he was once a father himself. Nadia realizes that Thomas must have gone through something far more difficult than her own problems. She apologizes to him and thanks him for being there for her. The next morning, David surprises her with a breakfast tray and several small notes scattered throughout the apartment, turning the whole thing into a treasure hunt. The final note tells her to meet him by the car. David is waiting for her there with their dog, Boris. He then reveals his plan for a romantic trip to Bear Valley, a place that looks like paradise on Earth and where they might be able to see the northern lights. Nadia becomes suspicious of the surprise and asks how he managed to get time off work. David explains that he called in sick. He tells her that he may have the best job in the world, but that doesn't mean he is willing to lose the best girl in the universe. Nadia laughs at her fiancé's endless goofy jokes, and her mood has already improved after the whole trip. Boris is excited about the journey too. While they're on the road, Nadia asks David to pull over after she feels like she can't catch her breath, but she tells him it's just dizziness from the trip. A few miles later, they stop at a gas station to fill up the car. At that moment, another vehicle pulls in, and two men who look like troublemakers get out. Their names are Yarmo and Roll. Roll takes an interest in Boris and starts talking about his own dogs. David briefly looks toward their vehicle and notices a dog that is much bigger than Boris. Its stare is anything but friendly. On top of that, Roll handles Boris a little too roughly. His behavior is irritating, as if he relies on his intimidating size to see how far he can push people. David becomes even more uncomfortable when Roll starts hitting on Nadia in a disrespectful tone, but he tries to keep his temper under control. A little later, Boris starts pulling David, so he walks behind Roll's vehicle and notices a dead animal and a gun. The concern he had been feeling immediately turns into serious anxiety. He quickly returns to the car, wanting to get away from these people as fast as possible. But his haste causes a minor accident when he accidentally hits the troublemaker's vehicle. Nadia is terrified, but David assures her that the damage is minor and that they probably won't even care about it. When they arrive at the place where they are staying, they face another uncomfortable situation. The receptionist ignores them and walks away without saying a word. A man named Anna then appears and explains that the receptionist is a little suspicious of strangers, but he swears that her behavior has nothing to do with Nadia's skin color. David ignores the comment, shows him their reservation confirmation, and confirms that they will be staying for 3 full nights, plus the following night, because they plan to camp under the northern lights. Anna responds coldly, explaining that the phenomenon doesn't happen all the time. He also insists on warning them that they need to stay together because the cold there is no joke. However, he doesn't realize that David is already terrified, but of something completely different. Roll and Yarmo are sitting at the same place at one of the bar's tables. Anna gives David and Nadia the keys to their room and tells them there is a cabin farther north for visitors who get tired of walking the trails. The first night passes quietly, but David and Nadia are frightened again when they go outside early the next morning and discover that their car has been scratched along the side. Someone has also written a racist insult over the sticker on the vehicle. This makes Nadia angry with David. She tells him that none of this would have happened if he had confronted the two men at the gas station instead of running away. Despite everything, Nadia is even more furious with the two men. She makes David stop when she spots their pickup truck. David is afraid of provoking them, but he can't stop Nadia. She approaches them carrying a screwdriver, and Roll appears just as she is scratching his pickup. Roll asks her why she is doing it. Nadia screams an insult at him, and then runs back to the car when she sees Roll release the dog. David hits the gas as soon as she gets inside. Meanwhile, Yarmo gets out to see what happened, wearing the same confused and stunned expression on his face. After that, David and Nadia head toward the location Anna pointed out on the map. Finally, They begin enjoying the vast snow-covered landscape and set up their tent in a spot far away from the road. That night, David and Nadia sit together and admire the breathtaking view of the clear night sky. Nadia takes advantage of the peaceful moment to have a serious conversation with David. She tells him about the baby growing inside her. David is completely shocked, but he looks genuinely happy about the news and ready to start a new family. Suddenly, Nadia gets up in fear when a red dot appears in the middle of their tent. Boris starts making noise, and the two of them try to quiet him down because they want to hear who might be outside. Nadia gets annoyed and starts putting on her shoes, saying it must be some little kid playing around with a laser pointer. David and Nadia step outside the tent and start calling out, but no one answers. The red dot is now directly on the snow in front of them, clearly aimed at the couple. They keep insisting that it must be some kind of prank, but David becomes worried when he sees the dot on Nadia's back. He quickly moves to get her out of the line of sight, whoever is behind the prank. But the mysterious person doesn't give up and points the laser directly at her stomach. David becomes even more alarmed, so he jumps in front of Nadia and knocks her to the ground to protect her. The two of them start yelling and cursing at the stranger, demanding that they stop messing with them. David decides it would be safer to move the tent somewhere else. But while they are packing up their belongings, the red dot appears inside the tent again. Suddenly, the lights go out. A short while later, they hear someone whistle, and Boris immediately whistles back. He runs outside and disappears into the darkness. David and Nadia call for him, staring into the darkness and barely able to breathe from fear. Then they are suddenly jolted by the sound of gunfire. David calls Boris several times, but the barking has completely stopped. A second shot shatters the lantern inside the tent, sending them into a panic. They leave everything behind and run through the snow as the gunfire continues. The darkness is their only cover, but even that disappears when a flare is fired, lighting up everything around them. In the distance, they see a vehicle approaching, so they run toward an area filled with trees where they can hide. They crouch down, catch their breath, and listen carefully. They realize there are actually two vehicles. When they hear barking, Nadia is about to get up and search for Boris, but David refuses to let her risk herself. He becomes nervous too when the barking suddenly turns into muffled crying. As the sound of the vehicle gets closer, they carefully move to another location and manage to reach an empty cabin where they can hide for a while. But the cold is brutal, and the only thing keeping them warm throughout the night is holding each other tightly. When morning comes, they cautiously leave the cabin and head back toward their tent. As they get closer, David tells Nadia to stay at a certain distance while he checks the area. She lies down in the snow and watches him as he walks around the tent. Suddenly, David lets out a horrifying scream and rushes back, struggling to process what he has seen. Nadia becomes worried and approaches him, only to discover blood stains on the ground. All of their belongings are gone, and in their place, they find poor Boris's severed head. Nadia completely loses it. She starts screaming and cursing the cowards who did this to her dog. David tells her to calm down because they still need to find a way out of this nightmare. He still hopes they can find the car keys. He forces himself to ignore the disgusting scene and goes back into the tent. But while feeling around on the floor, his arm gets caught in a bear trap, which snaps shut as soon as he touches it. Nadia is terrified by his scream and helps him free himself. She then does everything she can to stop the bleeding, reminding him that she isn't officially a doctor yet. Both of them become increasingly shocked and furious over this sick revenge, all because of a simple accident involving the other men's car. After failing to find the keys, they try to find anyone who can help them. But the first person they spot in the distance immediately opens fire on them. They duck down and try to crawl behind the sparse vegetation, but it becomes obvious that they are even more exposed than they were the night before. David then says that he saw Roll's gun and that it looks like the gun from the video game he plays. That means the shooter has to reload after every shot, which takes about 10 seconds. As soon as they hear the next shot, they use those few seconds to run toward the trees. But David trips along the way because he is weak from his injured arm. He starts seeing strange figures watching him through the fog. While he tries to pull himself together, Nadia hears a strange cracking sound. She becomes terrified when she realizes that the sound is coming from the ice beneath her feet. In her desperate attempt to escape the shooter, she doesn't realize that she is running across a massive frozen lake. Nadia lies flat on the ice, trying to distribute her weight, and screams to warn David. But he can't hear her, even though he is only a few yards away. Suddenly, the ice collapses beneath David, sending him into the freezing water. Nadia is horrified when she sees him fall. She dives toward the hole and crawls closer, but by the time she reaches him, he appears to have already drowned. Then her hope returns when she sees bubbles rising to the surface. Thankfully, she finds him still alive. She pulls him out of the water, warms him up as best she can, and helps him reach one of the emergency cabins. From there, they contact the mountain patrol, who promise to send a rescue team as soon as the weather improves. Nadia takes care of David, and the two of them use this brief moment of peace to listen to the baby's heartbeat. They fall asleep wearing several layers of clothing and wake up the next morning to a horrifying surprise. The rescue team has actually arrived. But the person who was sent to rescue them is Yarmo, and he's armed. Apparently, he doesn't know who made the call. David and Nadia escape through the window before Yarmo can enter the cabin. They find themselves back in the forest, crawling into something that looks like a burrow without knowing whether it's empty. After a while, they realize it isn't empty at all. Yarmo is there too. Now the two of them find themselves trapped between two kinds of predators. Nadia grabs a flare she took from the cabin and strikes Yarmo with it. He falls backward as his clothes catch fire. The animal inside the burrow begins growling, so David and Nadia run away as fast as they can. Now they're lost in the forest, starving, freezing, and with no hope of getting help. On top of everything else, David begins suffering from sudden fainting spells and starts talking about someone controlling his mind. Nadia remembers the map Anna showed them and realizes that his cabin isn't far away. Sure enough, the small cabin appears in the distance as they continue walking. But David's episodes are getting worse and happening more frequently. We now see that the figure haunting David's mind is a young boy. David breaks down crying, saying that he doesn't deserve to be a father, and claiming that everything happening to them might be a sign from God. Nadia tries to calm him down and points out that the cabin is very close. She encourages him to keep walking, but David collapses again, falling face first into the snow. Nadia decides to go ahead and get help before he gets any worse. Just before she reaches the cabin, she hears the sound of an approaching engine. She hides to see who's coming. Unfortunately, Roll appears from behind her at that exact moment. He's armed, but he doesn't point his rifle at her. Instead, he looks extremely confused by her terrified reaction, as if he has no idea what she's been through. Before he can say anything, David attacks him from behind and hits him in the head with a rock. When David realizes that the man may be dead, he starts trembling again and sits there muttering strange explanations. He says that he had no choice but to do it because Roll was about to shoot Nadia. After that, Nadia helps him get into the dead man's car, and after a while, they reach Anna's cabin, hoping the nightmare is finally over. But David still needs urgent medical attention, so Nadia asks Anna to call an ambulance. She gently pats David and tells him that everything is going to be okay. However, she soon becomes suspicious of Anna's conversation on the phone. He starts saying strange things, and it doesn't sound like he's actually talking to an ambulance service. He then tells them that they're on their way and asks them to hurry. His voice sounds muffled as he hangs up, which makes Nadia suspicious and frightened because it's obvious that something is wrong. Still, he tries to stay calm and claims that the ambulance is already on its way. Nadia doesn't believe him and tries to support David, who has no idea what's happening. That's when Anna stops pretending and threatens them with a knife, telling them that all of this will be over soon. The two are shocked by the sudden turn of events, so they lock themselves inside one of the rooms. There, David makes an even more disturbing discovery. One of the walls is covered with photographs of him and Nadia in different places. On top of that, there's a picture of the little boy who appeared in David's hallucinations. Just when they think they've finally started putting the pieces of the puzzle together, the final piece falls into place. Thomas, their kind neighbor, walks into the room carrying a rifle and reveals that the little boy was his son. We then flash back to the past from Thomas's perspective. David and Nadia are driving down the road shortly after graduating. The two are incredibly excited about starting their life together, and they become intimate inside the car. Because of this, David fails to notice the child in time to avoid him. The car hits the boy, sending him flying. Nadia rushes over to check on him and is horrified to discover that he's still alive. She gets back into the car, only to be shocked when David starts driving away. She tells him they need to call the police. He agrees, but claims they should think calmly and get away from the scene before anyone arrives. They eventually decide to leave the scene without telling anyone. But Nadia is consumed by guilt and tries calling the police several times. David stops her, emotionally manipulating her by saying that he was the one driving and that if she calls the police, he'll go to prison. Crying, Nadia tells him that she's at least an accomplice. She actually makes the call, but hangs up when she sees the desperate look on David's face. He swears that he'll turn himself in and only needs a little more time to gather the courage. Of course, none of that happens, and the two eventually find themselves trapped in the nightmare they're living through now. As Thomas continues talking, we see another flashback, this time from his point of view. Thomas and his son are playing with a drone when the boy moves away to get a better view, completely unaware of the road. From a distance, Thomas sees his son standing in the middle of the street. He runs toward him as fast as he can, but he's too late. The car has already hit the boy, and the driver doesn't stop to help him. However, that doesn't mean the driver will get away forever. The drone has recorded everything from above. It is extremely painful for Thomas to watch the hit-and-run footage, but the recording eventually pays off. By zooming in, he manages to clearly see the car's license plate. After a quick search, he tracks down David's address. But when the police ask Thomas if he has any information or leads that could help them catch the people responsible, he says no. Thomas's family is destroyed because of two reckless young people who didn't even bother to stop and help. To him, prison would be far too easy a punishment. Thomas becomes obsessed with revenge. He starts watching David and Nadia everywhere they go, taking pictures and learning every detail about their lives. He then moves into the apartment across from them and becomes friends with the couple, pretending to be a friendly neighbor while waiting for the perfect moment to make his move. When he learns about their arguments, Thomas is the one who calms David down and encourages him to take the trip to Bear Valley. He has already planned everything he intends to do to them there. Back in the present, David promises that he will turn himself into the police. Nadia tries to appeal to Thomas's instincts as a father by telling him that she's pregnant, but he refuses to listen. Suddenly, he hits Nadia and knocks her unconscious. While they're waiting for someone else to arrive, Anna begins losing his nerve and suggests that they stop. But Thomas is tired of waiting. He points the red laser dot at David and orders him to use the power drill on Nadia's stomach. The two are horrified by the cruelty of the punishment, but Thomas shoots David in the leg to prove that he's serious. He tells David that Nadia still has a chance to survive if he obeys. Otherwise, he'll kill them both right there, starting with Nadia. David picks up the drill and slowly moves it toward his fiancée's stomach, but he can't bring himself to hurt her. Thomas decides the ending is taking too long. Just as he aims his gun at Nadia, someone arrives, but it's not the person he was expecting. The visitor is poor Yarmo, who is like a brother to Anna and has nothing to do with the attacks on David and Nadia. Yarmo assumes the couple is insane, which explains why he's been so shocked by their reactions to his aggressive behavior. Now Yarmo is convinced that they really are crazy, so he orders Anna to call the police. But moments later, he realizes that something is seriously wrong with the situation. Thomas shoots Yarmo, and Yarmo fires back. One of the bullets hits Anna. Yarmo survives and threatens to shoot Thomas, who attacks him. David uses the chaos to free Nadia, and the two run out of the cabin. But they can't use the car. As they escape, David admits that everything that happened was his fault, and tells Nadia to save herself and leave him behind. When Thomas comes out of the cabin, Nadia has already gotten away and is running through the forest. She eventually trips over Roll's body, which is lying beside his gun. Thomas tries to force David to reveal Nadia's location. David tells him that she has nothing to do with any of this. But he panics when he suddenly hears her voice right beside him. She's holding Roll's gun, forcing Thomas to lower his weapon. Nadia becomes suspicious of Thomas's strange smile. Suddenly, she is shot in the head. David is horrified as the person who fired the shot steps out from behind the trees. The shooter is Mona, Thomas's wife and Anna's sister. David believes he's finally doomed, but Thomas decides to change the ending. One final bullet would have ended David's suffering, so Thomas and Mona walk away and leave him alive. David is left behind to live the rest of his life with the guilt of what he did. And that's the end of the movie. Thanks for watching, and don't forget that your opinion matters to us. Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel.